What's going on, guys? It's Hi with the Uplift USA, and today I'm bringing to you a classic camera from the Nikon lineup. This is the Nikon N2020. According to the internet, the Nikon N2020 was actually Nikon's first popular or successful autofocus film SLR. The N2020 badge was actually for the North American market. It is known as the Nikon F-501 in other places. Funny enough, when I was looking to buy one, cameras with the F-501 badge were actually cheaper than those with the N2020 badge, a lot cheaper. Some F-501s were like $50 while the N2020s went into the hundreds. Even though this is an older film camera, it has a lot of the features that we see today. This camera has things such as exposure compensation, single and continuous shooting, a self-timer, auto exposure, and autofocus lock. As a film camera, it can automatically advance film and read DX codes. Now I have to admit that when I first got interested in this camera and really looked at it, it seemed like an overly complicated camera, and a lot of that has to do with this top plate, especially at the shutter speed and auto exposure dial. Most of it looks pretty standard, numbers indicating your shutter speed from 1 second to 1/2000th of a second, B for bulb, A for aperture priority, all pretty normal until you see P dual, P, and P high. For me, this is actually one of those cameras that I actually had to look at the manual to really know how to use it. P is program normal. It's similar to the program mode of modern cameras where the camera takes control of everything and essentially turns it into an automatic camera. P high stands for program high speed. This mode essentially puts an emphasis on and favors higher shutter speeds. The manual recommends using this mode when you're using a telephoto lens or trying to photograph fast-moving subjects. In P dual, the camera automatically selects between P and P high depending on the focal length of the lens that you are using. With lenses shorter than 135mm, the camera goes into P normal. Telephotos of 135 or greater gets P high to help reduce motion blur. Another thing that I've also never seen is this switch that's on the right of the shutter speed dial. This is an audible warning switch that lets the camera beep at you if you put non-DX coded film in but set the camera to read DX codes, when the DX contacts require cleaning, or when you're over or underexposed in automatic exposure modes. For me, the big attraction of this camera was the autofocus capabilities. After all, it is Nikon's first popular autofocus camera, or at least according to the internet, so I was really interested to see how it would compare to modern standards. And I think that was my problem, because I've been fortunate enough to have tested a lot of really good autofocusing cameras. So jumping into this, when I first turned it on, I literally sat here and laughed at the autofocus capabilities just because it is, quite frankly, the worst autofocusing camera I've ever used. But like I said, it's really not fair to compare this camera to a modern camera because we have to remember that this camera launched over 30 years ago. The Nikon N2020 offers two autofocusing modes, continuous servo autofocus and single servo autofocus. In continuous, the camera will continue to focus as long as the shutter is pressed. In single, the camera will only attempt to focus on a single subject per shutter press. From my experience, if you're shooting in bright daylight or just have really good lighting conditions, the autofocus on this camera is actually really not that bad. But that being said, I don't think I've ever had the camera actually just lock onto focus on the first try. It'll generally hunt and go back and forth just a slight bit and then actually grab onto the focus. The unfortunate thing is that when you're losing light and conditions just get darker, autofocus really takes a hit with this camera to the point that, in my opinion, it's practically useless. Even when I'm out in the city trying to shoot at night and there's light from lampposts, sometimes it just does not focus. Even though I'm trying to focus on the lamppost with this bright light, it just won't focus sometimes. And you would think that this is time to switch over to manual focus. And it does have that feature, but this camera is not really optimized for manual focusing. It's the point where Nikon actually moved towards autofocus, and you can really tell because if you try to manually focus, it's really like manually focusing a modern camera. You can do it, but the camera is just really not optimized to do it. If you're considering buying the Nikon N2020 or F-501, I would really recommend you to just do it and try it out for yourself, as I think it is a great little camera and offers a lot of fun. But if you are going to buy one, I would really recommend you considering why you're doing it. Are you buying this camera to get the full film experience that everybody wants to get, as that you're going to go around, shoot film, and manually focus everything to get the full experience. If that's why you're doing it, I would really recommend you not go with something like this, because like I said, this camera has really moved away from manually focusing, and it just makes everything a little bit harder. If you're going to manually focus, just try doing it on the camera that you already have, and like I said, it's really like that experience. It's really nothing like focusing on something like the Nikon F3 over here. If you're looking for a good autofocusing film camera, again, I would not really recommend this camera, as it can be really inconsistent at times, and I would personally never take this camera on a professional shoot, as that autofocus can be really frustrating at times and it will miss on you. But to me, that's just part of the fun and experience of this camera. I don't really mind it, but if you're trying to be a professional with this camera, don't do it. Go with something like this Nikon F100 or the Nikon F5, F6. Those are actually really good autofocusing film camera, and I would highly recommend those over the N2020. But if you are looking for a cheap, fun little film camera to use, this totally gets my vote, because for the price, it offers a lot of value. As you can see, I have two of them in front of me, two bodies and two lenses, and I actually got this off of eBay in a lot. I got these two right here, along with a strap, a carrying bag, and the manual, and just little like knickknacks, you know. And I got all of this for 150 bucks. So the value is there. For $150, I mean, just two bodies and two lenses alone for $150, I think that is a great value. And that's why I would really recommend this camera. If you're just looking for another cheap camera to throw around and use, this is the one to go with. If you're interested in this camera, I will include links in the description below. Definitely check those out. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.